everybody. Welcome to the Harbor.Church podcast. Cool greeting, Pastor Josh. I'm here. I'm Katie Rose. I'm here with Pastor Josh Adams. We are both here, ready to party.
Are you doing good?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some days you feel a little froggy, and I'm just curious what kind of mood you're in.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you
going to behave yourself today? Or are you
Probably not. I feel lightly dissociated.
Cool. So
big meeting day. Been sitting and talking a lot, so continuing to sit and talk could go in any direction.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
Yeah, I know.
It can be good sometimes.
I
like
good.
Most of our conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Good.
Yeah,
well, hopefully today's
probably 6 out of 10 of them are solid.
Oh, I was going to give it a higher percentage. That hurts my feelings. So that's fine.
That's what I was going for.
All right. Well, screw you.
Well, thank you guys for being here. We just kicked off a brand new sermon series.
Come on now.
Last weekend was Easter. This weekend we're getting into some fresh stuff.
And the Johnny Cash song, kicking it off with Personal Jesus. I just love it. I love it. I feel so bad for Chris in making our bumper videos. He's like, that song is not at all upbeat. I'm like, yeah. We always give everybody upbeat songs for our bumper videos. Like, just a real downer one is okay every once in a while.
I was wondering how it would feel for you coming out to just kind of spooky Johnny Cash vibes, but I guess if you're into it, I'm into it.
I mean, it definitely caught our congregations off guard. Yeah. They were like, do we clap? What do we do?
I'm supposed to enjoy this?
I'm like, come on. Just
next series is going to be Boy Named Sue.
Why not? Why not? Why not we'll just hit everything that Johnny Cash.
Actually, this whole year is just a Johnny Cash theme.
Blues. I mean, you know what? I do a whole series on being in jail. There's there's some cool prison stories.
Prison stories. Yeah. That's true. Well, on that, let's get a little peek behind the curtain. First of all, we did kick off this new series. It's called That Was Awkward. Looking at when the Bible gets personal. So what was the impetus for that for you? Like what was the driver for getting into this series?
I just thought, man, when was the last time anybody ever looked for the times when the Bible kind of just caught you by surprise? Like, you ever just do your devotions or just be reading and you're like, ooh,
yikes.
Ooh, that hurt, you know? Like, there's times Jesus would just look at a group of people and be like, get back from me, you hypocrite pit of vipers, and you're like, dang, Jesus
that was a lot,
like throwing some shade on these guys, like just in their face, putting them down. And you're going, okay, that's awkward. That's tough. I mean, there's definitely conversations in the Bible where people got called out to their face. I think that's one of the things that I really gravitated towards, because it feels like in our culture right now, everybody's so sensitive and so easily offended. And I'm like, the Bible was very direct. And there's a lot of times passages that we're going to look at where it's not pulling its punches. It's like, here you go. And I think most people will look and go, well, that's so uncomfortable. The Bible's goal isn't to make you embarrassed. The goal of the conversations that we're going to be looking at wasn't to like tear somebody down. It was actually to help them heal and to recognize what was going on. I think sometimes you have to have a very awkward, direct conversation to point out where you may have gone off the rails. So if the Bible does it and we can just learn from it, maybe that helps us not avoid some of our own awkward conversations.
Yeah, that's good. And I do think, for me, like, if I'm not able to take that kind of tough, pushing, challenging directly from God and His Word, I'm certainly not going to be able to take it from the people in my life that He brings that also have some challenging stuff to tell me.
Well, how many people that you can think of, and obviously it's becoming more and more prevalent, they would love to go through their life and avoid all controversy, all heavy things. Like, if you're never challenged, and I get why people don't want to be challenged, but if you're never challenged, you're not going to grow in any healthy way.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like the best shape you were ever in. You were being challenged to run more, lift more, whatever.
Coach was forcing it.
Yeah, your best walk with God is going to become when you're challenged. You meet the challenge of like, I got to spend more time in my Word, or in His Word, in the Bible. I got to spend more time doing devotions, or all of our growth comes from the valleys, from the challenging times. So why is it we avoid them so? We go out of our way to make sure that everything is easy and unoffensive, and yet those are the times that we experience our greatest advancements. Yeah,
and I think that's even becoming really clear in culture, and God knew it a long time ago, but like, what we want is very rarely what is actually good for us. Like,
oh, sure.
I think everybody who's listening right now probably knows that we shouldn't look at our phone before bed. And what does everybody do?
We do.
You hook your phone for like the stuff we want to do is the worst thing for us.
And we often choose what we want way more than what we need.
Yeah, we're pretty good at choosing what we want.
Do you remember, and this is a throw, you remember that movie Biodome?
Yes.
Yes.
Pauly Shore.
Yeah, Pauly Shore. Yeah. And one of the Baldwin, Stephen Baldwin, maybe?
I think it was Stephen,
yes. So very silly stoner kind of movie, you know, whatever. But it was based on a real experiment. And I don't know if you remember, I used this in a sermon illustration, the true life biodome, where they try to create, an entire like hemispheres worth of like obviously it's a much more smaller condensed version, but they wanted to like an ecosystem. Yes, sorry, I couldn't think of the right word. They wanted to create all that inside of these domes in the desert, and they brought in all this food, and they brought in all these different plants, and even I think maybe even some animals and stuff. But they wanted to have these people live in and be sustained inside these biospheres. Well, one of the things they did in creating the ecosystem inside there to help sustain life is they created like this forest, I believe water, and, they brought in these trees and they had all this stuff, and they created what they thought was the perfect environment. And so they said, hey, man, we're going to get rid of like diseases that would kill plants, and we're going to get rid of the bugs that kill plants. Like we're going to have a ton of sunlight, a ton of water. We're going to make sure it's there. And they had inside this ecosystem, they had great temperature, water, sunlight, and they grew these trees, and these trees grew faster than they do in the wild. And they're like, see, like we proved it, like we can do it, except for the trees fell over. They would grow up, and then they would tip over and they'd fall over. And they're like, what the heck? They got these trees to grow faster than they would normally. And they're like, clearly we've created a better environment. And I say this for all of our listeners, the thing that they didn't account for was wind. And that as these trees, as little saplings are growing, the wind is pushing them back and forth. And as the wind blows them back and forth, they grow their roots deeper and deeper to grab onto more and more soil, to grab onto more and more structure, rocks and stuff beneath the ground so that they could hold on. And every time the wind would flex them back and forth, it kind of strengthened them, and it shifted the dirt enough that they would just keep digging their roots back and forth, so that by the time they get to be these huge trees, they could hold themselves up.
Yeah.
But they didn't have wind inside the biodomes. And so they had all this growth, and then these trees tipped over. And I think that's so what people are doing today. They are looking for the perfect environment, right?
Yeah.
No bugs, no pests. Like, I don't want anything that annoys me. I don't want anything that hurts me. I don't want anything that would be negative. I just want all the sunlight, all the water. I want all the good, right? Give me the money, give me the praise, give me the accolades, give me the trophy for participating. Give me everything that makes me feel good. No, don't let anybody critique me. Don't let any coaches yell at me. Don't let any bosses talk down to me. Don't give me any opposition. And people are like, look how great my life is, except for you have no toughness to you. You have no durability. And I think that's just kind of part of that. I want to avoid everything awkward because it makes me feel bad.
And that's the book of James, right? Suffering produces perseverance, so on and so forth. Like we don't want it, but we do need it. And God knew that. I didn't plan to go down this route, but it does make me think of the fact I was just talking to your wife about this the other day. I've only dipped my toe into the waters of AI, and I think it can be a useful tool or whatever. And that's I'm not trying to get into that whole conversation because that's probably a podcast in and of itself.
It would be interesting. On AI.
And I'm not against it. I don't think it's necessarily evil, but I think it could go down some roads. But I think one of the roads that is dangerous, that it will almost certainly go down, especially for the next generation, like your kids and your kids' kids.
Yeah.
Like we're already into the point where people have like AI friends, and that's only going to get better. And all those AI friends are ever going to do is support you and mirror you and tell you exactly what you want to hear. And you will never get any conflict. You'll never get any resistance, and you won't know how to have real relationships. And the second a real life person comes up to you and doesn't completely agree with you, you're going to fall over like those trees.
You already see people don't know how to handle any disagreement, and they haven't grown up with AI.
Right.
They're just spoiled.
Yeah.
And so, I can't imagine when all I've received is affirmation.
Right.
How can I handle any resistance at that point?
Right. And we think, that's not real friendship, right? Like that has to be a robot.
Well, I mean, it's that whole thing. And Michael Jordan got kicked off of his high school basketball team.
Yeah.
Like you have to have some setbacks every once in a while in order to push back and go to the next level. Like if everything is there handed to you, you're never going to tap into your true potential. I don't know anybody that would if they never had to work for it and just came so easy. That how are you ever going to find out what you actually are capable of until you've had to push back against something?
Yeah, that's counterintuitive, but
I think that's what all these passages are going to be in this series. As we dive into it week after week, we're just going to basically talk about like, why was that so awkward, and why would God or Jesus or whoever in this passage, why would they say that thing, or why would they do that thing? I mean, like last week, looking at Paul, why would Paul call you out by name publicly? Couldn't he have written him a private letter? Well, no, they kind of have screwed up publicly, and everybody's kind of going, "Oh, is this acceptable?" And he's like, "This is so not acceptable."
Yeah, they need to address it in front of everybody. Yeah. So that is, let's get into that a little bit, because it was a cool passage. It was really just a few verses from Philippians 4.
Yeah.
A couple of gals who are having a disagreement, and Paul's like, "Hey, ladies, time to cut it out, basically. Because you belong to the Lord, like it's time to get over yourselves."
Yeah. Eulita and Syntyche, man, these ladies go down in history for having a fight.
Yeah, we hate to see it.
Which is sad, because he also says, man, they did a great job helping me, and they're partners in the faith, and they did a really good job getting the church up and running. But then they got distracted, and I think all of us are susceptible to that as well, like being a part of something great and then ruining it.
Yeah, with just one little...
Yeah, how many family game nights started off with like, let's spend the time together, and then it ends with the Monopoly board getting flipped over. Yeah. And people swearing at each other and leaving. They're like, "Listen, I'm never talking to you again." Like a Stop Kemps or something. It's like just a
Stop Kemps.
It's just an opportunity to kind of check and see if you have if you get called out publicly. Obviously, there's embarrassment. I think you almost have to be a psychopath to enjoy that. But then we have, okay, now what? Like it's awkward. The awkward thing has been said. Now what? What do you do next? And I think for a lot of people, the temptation from society is run, hide, the fight or flee. Like a lot of people just like, I'm just it. If you're going to call me out, how many people leave church because they don't like what the pastor preached?
Yeah,
or because they got challenged. Or a boss or something. That's what kills me the most is the friends, and then even more so the family.
Yeah.
The amount of people that I encounter who have broken ties with family members, we're talking blood. They don't talk to their mom. They don't talk to their own brother, their own sister, their dad, whoever, because something was said, something was done that hurt their feelings, that made them mad. And man, and that relationship's gone. And I said in the message, I think it almost always comes back to pride or selfishness.
Yeah.
Like a part of something you did either hurt my ego,
sure,
and I'm embarrassed or humbled and I don't want to be, or we're talking about a possession and one or both of us is craving the same thing.
Yeah.
And our greed, our selfishness is coming out.
Yeah, you can't come to an agreement. Yeah. What I actually wanted to talk about, we got quite a bit into the idea of gossip, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
We talked about when Kaylee was on. Official stance is a thumbs down to gossip. We don't like it. God doesn't like it. We all know that.
Yeah.
Like nobody identifies themselves as a gossiper.
Nobody thinks they are.
Everybody is one. Like everybody's doing it one way or another. But actually what came to mind while you were preaching this weekend for me was there are very clear cases of gossip. Like there are times people are doing
I thought you were going to drop some names. I was like, oh, okay.
Actually, let's gossip live.
Yes.
Here's some examples of what it looks like.
That aren't here. They suck. Let's go.
That's what not to do.
Yes.
Next week. Yep. Yes. No, I was actually thinking, I think for most of us, the biggest temptation to gossip tends to come with our closest relationships, right? Our best friends, our spouses, whatever, our coworkers. Those are the people we tend to talk to about other people, and not necessarily a positive light.
Sure.
But there's an element of those relationships where you do have to discuss other human beings.
Sure.
Like from a work setting, like you at a certain point have to evaluate in conversation your coworkers. You and your wife probably have to talk about your kids and talk about what they aren't ready for, and was it like
well, the Bible talks about slander, and that's where you're tearing people down, and you're doing it in a way that never gives them a chance to speak to it, deal with it. You're not doing that because you want to see them better. Right. You're tearing them down because it's exciting for you and another person to make fun of them or to you feel better about yourself. Like you and I are like, oh, we don't dress like that, or we wouldn't talk like that. We wouldn't make that mistake.
Sure.
And now we feel better between ourselves by highlighting somebody else's issues. There's nothing good that comes from that. That's just slander. You're not trying to help them. You're not trying to grow. You're not giving them an opportunity to explain or to respond in any way. So I think there's a difference between like, okay, we have to have a discussion about what's going on and we need to make a decision or we need to go somewhere, or let's just get a little, have a little bit of fun and
right.
Feel the excitement of tearing somebody down behind their back. Two totally different things.
Yeah, that's good. So what do you, in your own life, when you feel the temptation to gossip, and maybe even it's a legitimate conversation that has to be had, and you don't know where the line is, like what are some metrics you use or prayers you pray or whatever? Like, what do you do?
So what I found that annoys people, so I'll just start there.
Perfect.
When I'm with somebody and they clearly don't like somebody else and they want to engage, they want to engage me with like let's tear this person down. I try to quickly talk about how much I like that person. And that usually shuts it down because then they're like, oh, this person's that person's friend. And even if I'm not that person's friend, if you want to like Chris, who's standing here, so people can't see him on camera, but he's standing here. If you were like, oh, Chris sucks. Let's talk about how much Chris sucks.
Yeah, which I did just say that.
Yeah. I would be like, I would try to, if I saw you trying to be like, Chris did this, I'd be like, man, I love Chris's heart, and I love, that he was willing to move all the way here from Colombia. And man, how cool is it that he's taking this step of faith? I would try to talk him up to either soften your heart or to let you know,
I'm not going to be part of this. Yeah,
Josh is not somebody who's going to join in me. Here's where it's tough, is when you dislike somebody that I also struggle with liking,
right?
Which might be Chris,
for sure, Chris.
But no, if I agreed with you, and so people find this a lot in politics right now. You hate the same politician I hate. Yeah, let's
go off about it. Yeah.
And whether that seems like ethereal, it seems like that's so far away. They're a celebrity, they're out there, but it's the same. It's the same principle if it's the person we go to school with or that works, across the hall from us or whatever, or if we're family members. This happens a lot with siblings, right? Let's talk about our other sibling. Let's talk about an aunt, an uncle, a mom, or dad. What we can do and what I think helps shut it down is you start to speak about their qualities and rehearse in their mind their qualities. And if you can't find anything good about that person, that's a great time to pray. That's a great time to ask God, like, God, let me see them the way you see them. I try to play the devil's advocate, and I know that sounds like, okay, whatever, but I really do, and it helps soften my heart. When somebody really hurts my feelings or really annoys me, or does something that I'm just like, man, that makes me dislike this person. I do ask God, I'm like, God, why would they do this? And what's going on in their life? And why would they say such a hurtful thing or whatever? And I try to imagine a scenario where I see their backstory.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not into this whole Disney thing where every villain is actually a good guy who's misunderstood. I don't believe that. I think there are just some bad people who do really bad things. But I also know that I've done bad things. Yeah. And I'm sure I've hurt people's feelings. I'm sure I have been rude intentionally and a lot of times unintentionally, but people perceived it. Katie, I've heard stories of people who left our church because they're like, pastor hates me and pastor's mean to me or pastor doesn't talk to me. And I'm going, I don't know who this person is.
Right.
I wasn't going out of my way to be rude. I just, in the hallway of seeing 50 people, I just didn't say hi to them. And they're like, I knew it. He hates me. And I'm like, I really don't hate you. So I know that there's times that I have inadvertently hurt people.
Sure.
And never even knew it. I was oblivious to it. And that if I hurt you and then I appear like I'm callous and don't care that I hurt you, you're like, see, it may be that somebody hurt me and they didn't realize they hurt me. It could be that they hurt me and they were dealing with something else. The amount of times that I struggle because I have ADD. So I have to focus on my message in order to get ready to walk on stage.
Yeah.
The amount of people that come up and talk to me right before I walk up on stage, I mean, it's just the hallways. It's a packed church, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's Pastor Josh." It is so hard for me to be thinking about my message and truly be involved. And I know that's on me. That's not somebody else's fault. I've got to learn to be more present. But I am wrestling in my own heart, my own head with like, should I say this? Should I not? Would that work? And somebody will come in like, "Oh, hey, blah blah blah, blah, blah Patriots game, blah blah blah. Had a parade, did this, whatever." And I'm like, "Cool. Thanks, bye." If I'm not forcing myself to truly engage with them, I'm probably coming across disinterested or unloving, and that's not where I'm at. It's just that I'm I'm in another world and I wasn't anticipating that conversation. And I'm working on being better, but I can only imagine how many times I've hurt somebody's feelings, and that was never what I was going for. So I want people to show me grace.
Yeah. Assume the best.
Yeah. If we're both mad at somebody, let's assume the best about them. And if you're not at a place where you're willing to do that, I will. Like I want to try to be that count. I want to be a good friend to Katie.
Right.
So if Katie's really mad at Chris, the best way that I can help Chris is also help Katie understand that Chris is just a normal person going through something. And I would hope that if Katie and Chris are ever mad at Josh, that one of them would be like, hey, let's just remember Josh's good stuff too. And he's only human or whatever. Have a lot more grace for one another. Yeah. And I don't see that happening very often. So you can pray for him. You can talk good about him. You can reference your friendships with them. Usually all that stuff shuts it down. You can invite the person who wants to gossip to pray with you for that person. And that almost 100% of the time shuts down. Like,
different to not work, yeah.
Let's talk about. Now, a lot of people watching this or listening to this are like, I will never do that. That feels so cringe.
Weird, yeah.
But you know what you can do is as soon as they say something, like if you get, highlight, you're like, oh, Chris took my parking spot today at work and I can't believe he would park in my spot. He knows that's my spot. Whatever your frustration is, I would just interrupt and be like, oh yeah, I'm sure he did. Me too. Let's ask him. Let's get Chris. Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, what?
Chris, yeah.
And then you will immediately be like, and if they're not there, if we're like, if we're at lunch or something, like, hey, let me text them real quick. Let me call. And they're immediately like, oh no, never mind, not a big deal. No.
Well, and that actually very much
they learn not to.
Speaks to like how I've had to kind of police myself on that with the help of God, obviously. But like for me, if I frame it as the only options on the table when I'm bothered with someone are to either let it go via prayer, talk to God about it, or talk to them about it. If those are the only two options, I'm letting most things go.
Yes.
And I'm not gossiping. Yes.
And you're not recycling it over and over.
Yeah, and there's nobody else.
Mind.
Like if I take the option off the table to go and talk to 18 other people about it before I go talk to that person directly, then suddenly all of these problems become a lot smaller because I actually don't want to have that conversation. It's not worth that conversation for me. So I'm going to go ahead and let it go and move on.
Oh, yeah. That's a really, really good thing. And it's a really good point. You realize very quickly, I'm being petty.
Yeah.
And if it's not worth the sit-down conversation,
right,
then it's not worth it taking up space in my head either.
Yeah. And even honestly, a little parking spot issue like that is a great example because we get annoyed about little crap like that all the time.
You'll keep
but
talking
if I then
about
imagine myself having to like, Chris, we really need to talk.
Let's
you parked where I want to park today. Yuck. Like, I'm not doing that. That's so gross and unnecessary and a waste of everybody's time. And like, I can immediately get more objective to see that like, I hope I'm better than that,
I love that you think it's gross because I immediately thought of somebody who was like, they want to talk about every single thing that hurts their feelings. And I'm going, they're going to hear this podcast and be like, yep, I got to talk to him. I got to go back in and tell the cashier at the Stop and Shop that I didn't appreciate that she counted the quarters before she counted the nickels.
Honestly,
and you're like,
I think that's better than holding on to bitterness. I don't think you needed to take it to that degree, but like I do think if you have to err on a side,
yes, bitterness is poison.
Err on the side of having those conversations more often than not.
I completely agree. I hope that the people hearing this would also recognize sometimes it's not worth the conversation because it's not worth taking up space in your brain.
Right.
Which means you really need to learn how to let go. What somebody once told me was it has to be affecting your life outside of your control for you to make it a big deal. Now, I don't know how necessarily that would all play out in every scenario.
Sure, case by case.
But most of the time that I would say, oh, it's affecting me, it's because I'm letting it affect me.
Yeah.
When it's affecting me, even though I'm like, okay, I'm choosing not to care, and yet it's affecting, like like you're my neighbor and you keep blocking the sidewalk where my garbage can gets picked up. So now my garbage won't get picked up and it's overflowing.
We got to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. It bothers me, but now it's affecting me outside. Whether I say, I don't care where you park. I don't care. Well, now it's not just affecting me in my own head. It's affecting me outside of my ability to say, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's talk about it, and I don't need to get mad about it. Let me start by cutting you slack and going, she doesn't know. Or she doesn't have a good spot to park or whatever.
It's probably not intentional.
Yeah. And here's what we need to recognize. And if you're listening to this and you're going, remember that we live in a culture now where everybody's a baby and everybody is upset. So most likely, if you're my neighbor and I come to you and I'm like, hey, Katie, the trash guy won't pick up my trash can when you park in this spot. There's a 50-50 chance, maybe even higher, that you're going to react defensively. Because we have people who have never had awkward conversations. To your point, they've only received affirmation. Mom always pat them on the head and never told them they did anything wrong. Well, now all of a sudden to have somebody call you out on a choice you made that was wrong, your first reaction may not be, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. Your first reaction might be like, I didn't do anything wrong, move your can, like do something else, like to defend yourself. Even to the point of being obstinate or belligerent.
Sure. I
see that happening a lot. And what you have to remind yourself is stay calm. You don't have to yell. You don't have to meet their anger or their pushback with your own. The person who can keep their voice calm is going to win the argument 9 out of 10 times. Because the person who's screaming, they don't know how to handle their emotions.
I also think probably approaching it not like an argument would be the wiser way to go. Like it really shouldn't be one. And honestly, I think most of these conversations are going to happen with people that you have a real relationship with. It may happen with a neighbor occasionally, but more often I think it'll be a friend or a family member or a coworker that the relationship is there.
What better motivation to actually get to know some of those people?
Right?
Like maybe I should talk to my neighbor beyond when I have a problem
before
with my
there's
neighbor.
An issue, yes.
Or the guy in the cubicle across from me or whatever, right? You know, like, okay. I think that might actually just be a good precursor. If somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'll handle it when I handle it. Well, how about today you build some inroads of friendship? Because if I have a neighbor who knows me and waves hi to me and like, you know, comes over and helps me shovel my driveway when it snows or stops and talks to me when they're walking the dog, I feel like I have a friendship or at least a casual acquaintance with them. If they then, after like the 5th conversation of just pleasantries and being nice, happen to mention that I'm making their life difficult with something, I'm a lot more likely to receive that with like, I'm sorry.
I don't want to do that.
I didn't realize. Versus this is the first time we've talked and you're mad at me and I'm embarrassed. Yeah. Don't be surprised.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised if that's how a coworker reacts when you need them to change something.
If you only ever talk to them in that way. Yeah. And I think like I've had those conversations in my life. I had a friend even recently like call me and just say, hey, these things about our friendship have been hurting me. And it was not a fun conversation, but
They talk about like your BO problem and failure.
No, they were aware of that from the outset.
Okay. Yeah. They're like, I don't shower.
Yeah. Personal hygiene.
I'm a Richie.
Not for me.
This is how the Irish do it.
I'd like to be clear to our listeners.
I would like to go on the record and say Josh is joking currently.
This is not real. If you're not watching, we're laughing.
Well,
I shower fairly
sometimes
regularly.
I hide truth inside jokes.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we can talk about deodorant later. In the meantime, no, but it was a really genuine. It was not an easy conversation. It was a hard one, and it was awkward. But I'm really grateful, genuinely, for it that she had the courage to say it instead of just staying mad at me. And we found through that conversation that nobody had done anything intentional. Really, no one had ever even really done anything wrong. It was just a series of misunderstandings and miscommunications. And I think most things play out that way if it's someone that you really love and are close to.
And I can't emphasize enough, and I know that all of our acquaintances are believers and Christians, and you know, a lot of the listeners to this don't have a walk with God, but that's where I would say, man, the value of having a hard conversation between two believers is that there is a Holy Spirit that bridges a gap where a lot of times feelings would just be hurt and left. And you know my story. Maybe some of our listeners don't, but I'd gotten into business after college, and I knew God had called me to ministry, but I started a company and kind of got wrapped up in that, and I was making money, and everything was growing and exciting, and man, I was so pumped to see how God was using me, and I think it really was a blessing from God. But I had allowed that blessing to turn into a distraction. And so I started drifting away from church, and I started drifting away from what God had called me to. And a friend of mine, he was running the youth ministry where I was volunteering and serving under. And he saw me drifting. His name's Scott. He's an executive pastor out in Idaho now, maybe one of the best executive pastors on the planet.
We love Scott.
He works with Harbor.Church and does a phenomenal job. But back when we were younger, he was a youth pastor, and he let me. It's where I cut my teeth with a lot of youth ministry. He allowed me to do a lot of stuff in the youth group, playing games and even teaching sometimes and stuff like that. And he came to visit me at the company that I'd started, and I was so excited to show him all that God had done and all that, like, this growth that had happened, all these blessings. And I wanted to show off, like, man, the company's growing, all the employees I had. And he was so unimpressed that it hurt my feelings. And I think, looking back on it, I don't know where he was at, but I imagine he kind of knew he had need to have a hard conversation with me.
Yeah.
So I thought, like, he was there for me to show stuff off, and he was there to try to help me. So in all of that, I remember him just being very blunt with me and being like, yeah, this is fine if this is what God intended for you to do, but is this really the plan? Like, like you said that you felt like God was calling you into ministry, and now you're going further away from ministry.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, in my mind, I just was looking at him going, why would you say that to me? Of course, like, this has got to be from God. Like, look how good it is. Like, I've never made this much money. Like, I've never been this happy, right? Like, this has got to be from God.
It's all positive. Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, and this is good if this is God's plan for you. But you said that God had a different plan for you, and now you're following after, business success. And I'm going, in my mind, just be happy for me, bro, and just congratulate me. Be impressed. If not impressed, fake a compliment or something. And he was just like, man, I love you. And I want you to pursue God's best for your life. I want you to lean into what what God's called you to do. And I was so mad at him. I did not receive it. I did not be like, oh man, you're right. Let me change my ways. I was kind of like, all right, get out of here.
Bye.
Yeah. And so I say that to say there's a lot of people, maybe they're hearing this and they're going, well, I'll have the difficult conversation. Well, it may not be received the way you want it to. And I said this to somebody yesterday. I'm not responsible for getting you to do the thing that you need to do. I might just be responsible for showing or pointing that out or bringing it to the surface. I might need to ask you, or I might need to say something, but it's not on me how you choose to react to it and what choices you make.
Not in control of that. Yeah.
I have to answer for my choice of whether I step up and talk to you and say the tough thing, or whether I, chicken out and just say everything's good. Yeah. And, long story short, man, after Scott left, God just kept using his words to echo over and over and over in my mind. And, man, it wasn't much longer after that doors opened, and I got an opportunity to leave Missouri and move to Massachusetts to become a youth pastor myself. And I don't know that I would ever been ready to explore that if Scott hadn't kind of planted that seed that, man, God has more for me. And I had to wrestle through it, and I was very unhappy when I got it. But looking back, I'm so thankful that somebody loved me enough to have a hard conversation. Yeah. And he did. And, I share that story a lot because I don't think people understand the gravity of talking about tough things with people. And you're like, oh, I love them, so I'm not going to ever make them feel awkward. If you really love them, have a tough conversation with them. The amount of parents, Katie, and you and I have talked about this in the past, that won't talk to their kids about stuff that's going on in society because they don't want to be seen as unloving or uncaring. Now, if your kid is making horrible choices, if you have a friend or a family member that's doing dumb stuff, you're not showing them love by encouraging them to walk further away from God. That is not loving them. That's a chicken's way out. That's a coward's way out. And society, of course, the world will tell you, you gotta just support them and condone them and celebrate their sin. No, you don't. That's a lie. That's a lie. That is not showing them love. If I was drinking poison and I said, this is what I want to do, you don't show me love, but I'm like, okay, I'll cheer you on while you drink poison. You'd be like, no, dude, I love you. You're going to kill yourself. You're hurting yourself. This is not good for you. So I think that's where we have to check ourselves on.
And I think that kind of goes in line with what the challenge for this week's message was, which was, you're feeling bitterness in your heart toward anyone, just start praying for them once every day. I think the key to those kind of conversations, actually reflecting God and being loving and not hateful, is to approach them prayerfully and from a position of love, not judgment or trying to control the outcome, but just like, man, I love you and I'm going to lay out the truth in the way God has shown me because I care, and I'm not coming down on you, pissed off and shaming you and trying to get you to act different. I'm just pointing out God's truth to you, and the rest is up to you. And I think a lot of us get that wrong a lot of the time.
Sure.
And then everybody just leaves more mad at everybody else.
Yeah. How many times is that? That's more the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're not looking for it. They're not looking for. I think every time you see it in Scripture, like what I talked about a little bit yesterday was called church discipline, and this idea of like we're going to have to deal publicly with some sin that was private and now it's public, so we have to deal with it publicly. I think a lot of people see that as mean. The goal was never to be mean or to embarrass. The goal was always reconciliation.
Right.
When you read Matthew, where it talks about like, oh, hey, if you got a beef with somebody and they won't deal with you, you bring in a third party, you bring in a buffer, a mediator, and you have a conversation together. The goal is, once again, not to pile on or to create greater division. The goal should be, how do we reconcile this relationship? How do we get to a place where you and I can hang out and truly love one another, or work? The thing I say to people inside of our church is, I think you got to get to a place where you can worship right beside that person and not be distracted. Can you and I stand in the same pew or the same aisle, same row, and sing a song about how great God is and how much we love God and how much He loves us? Can we do that without going, oh, her?
Yeah.
Why is he standing next to me? If that's in your heart, then you're not in a healthy place. And I think the thing that caught me, and I didn't get to bring this into the message, so you just made my mind go back to like, what did I leave out? You know the part where the Bible says, like, if you held something in your heart against somebody, leave your offering.
Yeah, and go deal with it
and
first.
then go deal with it. How cool is that?
Go talk to them.
We don't talk about that. Like, how many people come to church, they raise their hands and they say their prayers, but they have something in their heart against somebody else, and they're not at all, willing to deal with that. And they're like, oh, I'm still good. I'm still praying. I'm still talking to God. Well, He says, if you don't forgive somebody else, why would I forgive you? The whole like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. He also says, if you don't forgive, then why would God forgive you? And I think people misunderstand. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love you and won't forgive you. It means that he can see the sincerity of your heart.
Right.
You're not really worshiping God.
Right.
When
if
you
you're
hate,
not willing
when you hate
to pass
somebody else.
on. Yes. Yeah. And as with everything, I think what God shows me again and again, the more I get to know Him and the more I study His Word and try to take steps after Him, is all of these things are for our benefit. Like, there's just so much freedom in living a life where there's nobody I'm scared to run into in the grocery store. Like, it's not, God isn't giving us these rules because He's like get some sick joy out of it. He's like, hey, I know what a rich life is, and I know what will get you there. Follow my instruction to find it.
That root of bitterness, people don't even realize how much it's choking the life out of them. They've gotten so used to living their life bitter that they think that the peak of happiness is what they're experiencing right now, and they are so far from the peak of happiness. You're standing on an anthill, and what God has for you is Mount Everest, but you're never going to experience it because you have so much bitterness in your heart. But you've gotten so used to it that you're just like, yeah, this is how life is. It doesn't, and God's like, no, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it could be so much better.
I wanted to get you. I know we're running out of time, so I wanted to get your opinion on this. You heard me give that quote from Corrie ten Boom, the lady who was in the concentration camp in Germany during World War II, and her family dies, and then one of the guards from the concentration camp, and she describes how evil those prison guards were. And I think there's probably something demonic there. And I think you could definitely talk. I mean, a place that kills that many people that relentlessly is super dark.
Level of
But those were human beings that were involved in that. And granted, some of them have told stories about how they were there, and some of the backstories to some of the people that were guards and soldiers during that time for the Nazis, man, how heavy that was. But this one coming and apologizing and ask for forgiveness, and her struggle, knowing as a Christian, I'm supposed to forgive. And we talk about like, you struggle to forgive the person who cut in front of you, at the checkout line. Yeah. She's struggling to forgive the person who murdered her sister.
Different level.
Big level different. And yet she does. And I was curious, what was your take on that, on like the really hard ones? And I had like 15 different examples of missionaries. There's a missionary whose family was taken and murdered by a militia, in the Congo. There was a mom and her daughter her husband and her son, their dad and brother, were murdered. And at the funeral, they see the mob that killed their brother and dad, and they're like, we forgive you, we love you. Stories of people go to prison to visit the murderer of one of their family members and forgive them and show them the love of Christ. You hear about that. What do you think? What comes to mind when you imagine that level of forgiveness, or the struggle that it would be? Or, if they can do that, why can't the average person, forgive their neighbor for borrowing the snow shovel and not returning it? Like, why is there that level of forgiveness for some people, and then others struggle on a real basic level?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple layers to it. One, I can't pretend to understand having to apply that amount of forgiveness to anybody else, but what Corrie ten Boom describes when she's talking about that in the book is, it was an act of God inside of her. Yeah. Like she
you don't
writes,
do that without the Holy Spirit.
Truly, and she's like, in that moment, I could not do it. I did not want to do it. I could not forgive him, and I said, God, I'm going to need you to do this. And he did. And she was like, I felt it happen miraculously outside of me. So I think that is part of it, is you have to trust God to give you that, to let it not be a feeling. Like, and you don't have to, feel like doing it in order to do it. And that's that quote you read. I also think it demonstrates in those people's hearts a much deeper understanding of God's forgiveness than what the average person has. Yeah. And when I can come to terms with, I'm not comparing myself to other people, I'm comparing myself to Jesus and how far from that mark I am, and how serious my own mistaken sins actually are, and how it pains God, like, for me to be this way, because I am this way. I'm screwed up, I messed up, I make mistakes all the time. If I can get to the point where I actually can wrap my hands around that and understand the depths of my own need for forgiveness, and that God offers it freely anyway, even though he is perfect and good and holy, and it becomes so much harder for me to have a hard time forgiving anyone else, no matter how heinous the thing they did was, because it could have been me. There's nothing so evil that, like, I'm completely separate from, because I'm messed up on the inside, and I've had a series of life choices and privileges that have kept me safe from making those kind of choices, but I didn't earn that. So I don't really get to look down on anybody else, because I'm just as screwed up as anyone, and a certain series of events could have gotten me in those same shoes.
Well, can we also take a second, though, to see that there's a difference between the God of the universe, who's perfect and holy, forgiving us, versus what we're also talking about when we say forgive one another. Now, the forgiveness I need from God is, I need justification. I need to be redeemed, because the penalty for my sin is that I deserve to be in hell. Like, sin is such a revolt against a pure, righteous, holy God, that it has to be punished, and it has to be cast as far away from him as possible. So for sin to be sent to hell makes sense for a God who's holy. When God forgives us of our sin, he's cleansing us. He's taking the penalty for that, and he puts it on Jesus, and Jesus paid that price. So me asking God for forgiveness is to truly see the price of my guilt be paid. When you offend me, or take, the last bag of chips, out of the vending machine when you knew I wanted it, whatever.
Sure.
I can forgive you of that, meaning, like, I'm no longer going to hold that against you.
Yeah, I'm going to let it go. Mm-hmm.
But let's say to go back to the heavy stuff, like murder, you murder somebody I love, I can forgive you and say, I'm no longer going to hold in my heart a resentment, a bitterness, a hatred towards you. I'm choosing to love you. I'm choosing to take that offense and put it away from me. That does not mean that you don't have to answer to God for that sin of murder. And I think people misunderstand when a pastor or a good friend says, hey, you need to forgive them. They're like, I can't forgive them because what they did was so evil.
Yeah, that's not the point.
Yeah, the point isn't that they don't have to answer, or they're not responsible for
Corrie
their mistake.
ten Boom wasn't saying what you did is okay.
Yes, it was okay that you were in a concentration camp. It's okay you murdered people. No,
like
that's evil. And you have to take that to God. And God is the only one. I need everybody to hear this. God is the only one that can remove the guilt and the consequence of sin. But you and I, one to another, can remove the bitterness and the resentment of how your sin has affected me and how I feel about you. Like, you hurt me, you did something evil to me, but I am choosing to not hold that against you. I'm choosing not to hold an account and hold a spot in my heart of resentment or bitterness towards you. That does not mean that you don't have to go and answer to God for that. I can't take away the consequence.
But it's not my job to hold you accountable.
And in case people didn't hear this in the message, when you forgive somebody, you're not forgiving them of their responsibility. You're not releasing them from what it is that they have to answer for. You're releasing yourself from being chained to the darkness of always being affected. Mm-hmm. Because there's some people that have hurt you and moved on and they've never thought about it again.
Right, and you're stuck.
And you're still stuck thinking about it because you haven't forgiven them. So you're not punishing them, right?
Yeah, you're just punishing yourself.
And that's a little bit different from somebody who committed murder. I would hope that somebody who committed murder definitely had to weigh through that. And I mean, a psychopath might not care about it, but most people, if they did something really evil, they're already weighing it and carrying it. But there's a lot of things that we get offended by, and we're holding it against somebody. I mean, you ask Chris, you ask me, and just we can come up with somebody in second grade who hurt our feelings.
Sure, and they've never thought about it since.
They have not thought about it one time. They don't even remember it, but we're like, oh, that really bothered me. Why? Because we have such a hard time letting go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just a reminder to those listening. If maybe you didn't hear the message and you need to be told this, or maybe just a reminder, pray for those people.
Yeah.
The people that you're holding on to business for, the best and maybe only way to really get over it is to give that over to God and genuinely ask God to bless them and care for them and watch how he softens your heart toward them to get you to a place of actual forgiveness.
Oh, and I knew that. I mean, I've heard that before. I heard that growing up, like pray for your enemies or whatever. Pastor Ron actually shared a story with me about how he had to pray for some people and how, like, day after day, year after year, praying for him, God really softened his heart, and he was like, cool. And he just saw how that was a healing time for him. Yeah. And I thought, man, if he can do that, then like I can do that. Like, why couldn't we all just kind of step into?
And it's a great point. It might not be an overnight fix. It probably won't be.
Yes, time. Especially if that pain was super deep. I think that's the difference, though, Katie, and we should probably talk about this on another podcast at some time. It's the difference between a wound and a scar. Man, when I don't forgive, when I don't let go, it's a wound that never heals. There may always be a scar. You might do something to me that hurts me and it cut me deep. If I don't forgive you, it's just a wound that festers and bleeds forever. When I forgive you, it finally starts to scab over. And yes, it may be a scar forever. It may always be a part of my story.
Life.
Yes. But a scar is way better than a wound.
Yeah.
A scar is a tough time that you live through. A wound can kill you. And if it keeps bleeding, if you never let it heal, and this is what gossip, to kind of round this whole thing out, gossip and rehashing the story is like picking the scab. It's like picking it and it just reopens it all the time. Yeah. Not to be gross, but like
we're all
the
familiar
imagery,
with that.
The imagery works, man. Like every time you bring it back up, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I do hate her. Yeah. Okay, now it's just bleeding again. Like, what good is that? It's got to heal at some point. Let it heal. Forget about it. Because what we said in the message was, man, you forgive and it releases you, but you forget and that keeps you free. You know, just I'm not bringing it back up. I'm not going to go back into the old history because it doesn't do any good. Yeah. And I think more people can learn and find some real happiness. And I hope our listeners would like kind of lean into that, man. Find some joy in not being tied down to
and the freedom.
Yeah, the crap that people have done and the hurt that you carry. And then also, if you are the one, maybe this whole time we've been talking about people who've hurt you, maybe you're the one you recognize, I have hurt somebody else. Man, if you recognize you are the person who has done that, I think you need to, especially if you're a believer, man, you reach out and you, with humility,
go make amends.
Apologize, say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't realize, and you can tell them, I was being stupid. I didn't realize what I was doing, or I didn't think about it, or man, God's changed my life since then. Make it part of your testimony. But see how God would work through that kind of stuff. So,
all right, gang, thanks for being here today.
That's a lot we covered.
Yeah, we're gonna catch you next week.
Yeah, man, that was fun.
All right,
thank you.